good to see everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I'm pleased to update you all on the progress of the record. Got all the rhythm tracks done now. All the rhythm guitar tracks are completed as of yesterday. Today I'm filming on the 2nd of December. And yeah, it's going really well so far. Rhythm tones sound really kick-ass, really crunchy, and I'm really happy with the two left and right tones that I've got on this record. A bit different than before because I'm using this Jackson 7-string for everything. I don't yet have a spare 7-string. Usually what I would do with rhythm guitars is I would have a different guitar for each side, for each track. I didn't have that this time. But thankfully I like, on my Marshall head, I like both tones. It's got 4 channels, a clean, kind of vintage crunch, a modern crunch, and then like a sort of modern distortion. And I like the kind of crunch channel and the modern distortion. I like both of them, so I used one channel for left side and one channel for right side, which is what I did in previous efforts as well. But it's enough of a tonal difference that it sounds like two different guitarists kind of playing it to some degree anyway, as much as you can. It's not really possible to completely replicate the difference in finger sound and that sort of thing. Anyway, I digress. The main thing is, yeah, rhythm tracks are done, and I'll be moving on to another part of the record. Right, so what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just restringing the dinky up for writing the solos. So the next stage of the record is obviously I'm going to go and start recording bass lines, and that'll probably take me through to Christmas time. So what we got, it's the 2nd of December, so a couple of weeks. So the idea is get the bass done before Christmas, and following Christmas I will start working on actually writing the solos, and in tandem with that I'll be probably starting to sort out the drum tracking as well to some degree. So realistically the date to probably have this record done and dusted, I had hoped originally to do it by the end of the year, but just circumstances have dictated otherwise. So probably summer, I would say, of next year, by the time it's all done and dusted, if things go well. Obviously bearing in mind it's going to take a couple of months to kind of mix it, and then there's artwork and things like that to consider. So yeah, I would say probably around about the middle of next year at this point. Right. There we go. 7 string strung up, ready to go. The solos, I'll just tidy her up now. Give the back of the neck a little bit of a clean. Make sure she's isn't covered in sweat and grime and crap like that. But yeah, so as I said before, hopefully summer next year I'll have this all done. In the meantime, in terms of the sound of the record, it's interesting. It's going to be quite different from the first two. It's loosely inspired. You may have read this on the website somewhere, but it's loosely inspired by Tron Legacy and the kind of soundtrack that Daft Punk wrote for that in some ways. For some reason that really came to mind when this whole COVID-19 pandemic situation kicked off. And I started realizing that there was sort of kind of like two camps of people. There were those that were kind of like straight away do what you need to do for your community. Didn't really think twice about that. Whether that was right or wrong, and you can debate that all day, and everyone has their personal opinions and views on it. Then there was another side of the community that was really felt like they had been infringed. They keep going on about their civil liberties being invaded and this sort of thing. And very quickly, there's a lot of conflict started firing up. So, and it wasn't just that. Obviously, there was the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that kind of kicking off with George Floyd, and all of that, and it's obviously run through the whole year. It's run through the whole pandemic, and we're starting to see some very obviously thrown into that mix as well. At the onset of lockdown, you had a lot of like panic buying and like aggressive retail shopping and that sort of thing. Anyway, I just have a lot to say about that. And yesterday, actually, the last set of rhythm tracks that I wrote, the intro of that was actually based on a bass riff I'd written some time ago, but it seemed really appropriate for this. Almost like it's like a scene out of World War Z, when they're like looting the pharmacy or something like that. And it's just like each man for his own. There's been times through this pandemic where it's kind of felt like that. And to some degree, sometimes it still does feel like that. There's some people that are working really hard to protect themselves and their families and their loved ones and grandparents and things like that. And there's other people who just don't give a rat's ass, they'll happily stand next to you and breathe over your shoulder without a mask. I've seen it in the workplace. You go in there and there's people who just choose not to believe and then claim that professionally that they're running a COVID secure environment, and it's a load of nonsense, absolutely a load of nonsense. It's just a farce. Anyway, I felt I had a lot to say about that, and it is going to probably influence the writing. I'm not saying that the record is going to be about COVID. It's more going to be a case that it'll be about human nature when the chips are down and the pressure's on. I've seen some interesting things from people, and not all of it has been very pleasant. To some people, credit though, I've seen some other people who've sort of really stepped up. So there'll be two sides to the record, but I think it's gonna be dominated by one of them. I don't think it's the side that most of us like. Anyway, that's where it's going tonally. In terms of pacing, there's a good mix. There's a bit more mid-tempo stuff on this record probably than there has been on previous records. but not by much. Maybe about 5% more or something like that. But there's still, I think the stuff that's fast, the stuff that's up tempo, is some of the most aggressive sounding riffage that I've written for a good long while now. So I'm quite happy with that. It's a little less thrashy than it was before. I would say more of an industrial vibe. I really wanted to embrace stuff like some of my other influences that have come later. The first two records, like, I wrote them quite a long time ago. Some of them when I was like a teenager, like the first record, A Darker Season, I wrote some of those tracks when I was a teenager. And, really heavily into thrash. And I was getting into the industrial stuff, but I wouldn't say I'd been listening to it long enough for it to have had a major influence. And I guess I really still want to play like real sort of 80s sounding guitar. But then, as I brought those two records, A Darker Season and Vendetta Unaccounted out, Vendetta Unaccounted had maybe a bit more of like sort of Opeth sort of style influences, just starting to ebb in there and that sort of thing. So that was a bit different. It was a little less thrashy as well, but it was still predominantly a thrash record. And since then, everyone has gone like hell for leather into the typical kind of solos and progressive metal type route. And then of course you kind of got like the Gen Camp and that sort of stuff. Gen's not for me, I don't really enjoy it, and each to his own. Like, I don't have a problem with people obviously listening to it. Like, it's a free country, or free world. But for me, it doesn't work. It's just not my sort of cup of tea. But I do like progressive music, but I didn't want this record to sound pompous, for lack of a better word, when everybody out there is writing to be complex. So I kind of made a purposeful decision to try to keep things, for lack of a better term, a bit simpler, a bit more straightforward. I just wanted certain things to just rock, if that makes sense. It's not like odd time signatures and stuff like that, which were featured a couple of times in the previous two records. So it's going to be a bit different that way. Right, I'm going to finish this up. I'll be right back. So this is the bass I'm going to be using for the record. See, Ibanez. This is a SR705. It's an active, semi-active bass, and I've done this for a while now. But this will be the first time I'm recording with it. I'm quite looking forward to it. It's a kick-ass sort of bass. Really enjoy it, and I think it's going to be fat. But it'll be interesting because I did use a different type of bass before and a bit of a different setup. So when I play bass on the records, I use a plectrum, and it's not because that's how I prefer to play bass. I actually prefer to play fingerstyle on bass, albeit I'm not very good at it. Okay, I can play in a blues band like no problem, and most rock bands, but at the speed that a lot of the tracks that I'm recording are going to be, I can't do that. I'm no like Rob Trujillo with my fingers. But even if I was, I actually prefer the tone of a plectrum for my music personally, and I think a lot of that comes down to David Ellefson and Jason Newsted. Everybody loves Cliff Burton. Don't get me wrong. Made the guy wrote fantastic music, fantastic bass lines. He had a great tone as well. Particularly on Kill 'Em All, actually, it's a really underrated record for the bass. The bass is really clear and upfront in that record, so you get to hear exactly what he's doing really clearly. And don't get me wrong, it's awesome, but it's a certain type of tone. It's very, when you play with your fingers, it's very warm type of tone. And I quite like the attack that Plectrum gets you. So, the best examples really is probably on King Nothing, on the Load record for Jason Newsted. I really like that sort of chorusy type tone. I tend to use that sort of thing for bass, just to kind of expand the bass a bit. And you look at David Ellison, it's got to be Peace Cells, isn't it? Really, that's the signature track that kind of makes you think of his bass. But also, actually, if you listen further down the catalog, down Megadeth's catalog, if you listen to Trust, the intro for that, the opening riff, again, you kind of hear, that kind of attack, that aggressive pick attack. They're not the only guys, but for me, just that they're in the sweet spot of when I was kind of growing up, and the records that made a big impact on me. And I'm not talking about from a playing perspective. I don't think anyone would dispute that like Master of Puppets is probably the sweet spot for Metallica. Justice could have been part of that if it had bass on it, which sadly it doesn't. But sonically, I think the Black Album is a better album sonically, just purely on the sonic quality. And Load is bigger sounding again, but it lacks a bit of cut from the guitars. And I'm just talking about sonics, I'm not talking about sound structure, or song structure I should say, tempos and things like that. So I kind of like the guitar sound to be something akin to what I'm going for on this record, is somewhere between, if you listen to Isan's record Arctis and Dimmu Borgir's Puritanical, before Entropia, I like that kind of saturation in the guitar sound that they've got on that. I like I like the bass sound as well, actually. I like the entire sound of that record. For me, that's my favourite sounding record probably of all time now. But it's not perfect, it does have its problems. But I see it like it's almost like a modern Black Album in my head. But I really like, obviously it doesn't have 7-string or 8-string or something, like really low tuned guitars on it. They are tuned down, but they're not to that extreme. I'm kind of aiming for something that's like a hybrid of Arctis, because that is like 8-string guitars and that sort of thing, 7 8-string guitars. Something like that, the kind of cut and grind clarity, the kind of crunch that Isan achieved with that record, I really enjoyed. But with a bit more saturation, kind of like the Borgir would have had at their prime. And the kind of bass attack that you would find off of something like Load. It's going to be difficult because at the end of the day, your bandwidth is limited through the 2 speakers. So. But that's the fun of mixing. Anyway, let's get on and get the bass ready for recording. Alright, that's the base strung up and all ready to go. It just needs a little polish to finish her off. So yeah. Anyway, I hope this update has been somewhat useful to everybody. And this will probably be the last time you get a big update from me before Christmas time. I'll just have my head down, really just cracking on and working on as much as I can. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say a huge thank you, really, for everyone who's tuned into the channel so far, subscribed, all that kind of stuff. That's really good of you. Really appreciate it. Big things happen from like little small beginnings. Have you ever heard that from? Something creepy. Yes, that's where I heard that from. Yeah, so like I said, summertime. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, if everything goes well. I have a few other things to tackle, like at the moment I've got the money coming in, so I need some form of employment, and that could complicate things. There are things that could get in the way of a summertime day, but that's what I'm aiming for. It seems realistic from where I'm standing now. In case you don't know, I have 2 other channels on YouTube. So I've got this one, which is for Masterless and the music that comes from that. I also have the Game Snapper channel, which is kind of news, reviews, little comedy things, and parody type stuff. I'll link that just above the at the top of the video. And I also have for anyone who's like maybe into martial arts and that sort of thing, I have a channel I do kendo, which is basically the Japanese equivalent of fencing, and has its roots in kenjutsu and the samurai and that sort of thing. I'll link that as well. You can go and check that out. It's quite a new channel. The gaming stuff, the gaming channel has more on it. The kendo channel has only just started, so it's only got a couple of videos. But it does I'm gonna do like gear reviews on it, and a couple of like how to and like sort of train along type videos and that sort of thing. If that's your cup of tea, head over there, check it out. Do the YouTube thing. Anyway, until next time, take it easy. Wish you all a Merry Christmas, all that jazz. Happy New Year. Best to your family. Let's hope this vaccine hits pretty soon, so everyone can get back to normal living. And hopefully musicians can obviously get out and gig and provide for their families and that sort of thing. Yeah, cool. Catch you later.